You're listening to the Indie Echo Podcast, a showcase of independent music and the artists that make it. I'm Jordan, producer at High Five Music. Today features a singer-songwriter who uses dreamy guitar and vocal textures to create captivating musical atmospheres. Here's Canada's Lyly Kid.
Natalie. I'm under the moniker Lyly Kid, like Lylykyd. I was going to school to university, and I had this Shakespeare class. It's kind of pretentious, actually, but my professor had put John Lyly and Thomas Kyd, which is like Shakespeare's contemporaries, on the board, and like it happened to line up as Lyly Kid, and I thought like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. I'm gonna steal that.
That is cool.
So I was born and raised in Kitchener-Waterloo area in Canada. Definitely, like in high school, I think, as many people do, they really start to get into their music tastes. I grew up on a lot of like Fleetwood Mac, Mac DeMarco, Phoebe Bridgers recently, for sure, David Bowie. Those are definitely some of the few that keep coming back, like recurring artists that I just kind of fall back into.
Was music in your family?
Yeah, actually, my older brother is official Johnny M, if you want to search him up. He's got his own recording studio here in Waterloo called Johnny Studios. So yeah, we're a very musical family. My sister sings. My dad's really good at the recorder.
And is your brother the one who mixes your stuff?
Yeah, I produce all my own things, and then I do like a rough mix. And then for the last 2 singles that I released, I went to him for like final mix and master. So it's really nice having someone in the family who can help me out with those last stages.
For sure. And were you writing when you were younger as well?
Yeah, so I started playing piano when I was around 10, so I was kind of a late starter. But as soon as I started learning, I started writing music. That's definitely like something I'm really passionate about. I love like the instruments and things like that, but it's usually like I just use that to songwrite. That's also the reason why I learned guitar. Like I kind of just stayed stuck at chords because I mostly just use it to write songs. It wasn't until I graduated high school that I decided to start actually producing and releasing my music. A big hurdle with that was actually completing full productions. I would always start a bunch of projects and then just abandon them and start on the next thing that interested me. But yeah, in the last like 3 or so years, I decided to really hammer that out and start like finishing projects, which was a fantastic choice to make because now I actually have music out.
And so the first one was You Still, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what made you think, this is the first one I'm going to put out?
Honestly, like, right now, I have been writing songs as I produce them. So You Still started off as mostly like an instrumental thing. I kind of just played like a few chords that I liked, and I started recording them right away to start getting that practice of just opening a Logic file and starting something. And I happened to like it a lot, so I just ran with it, and next thing I know, it was finished. So that's how You Still came about.
Through line in your music is like these just really nice guitar textures and vocal textures. So does that come from some kind of direct influence?
I would say it's definitely different with each song, because in different phases of life, I definitely listen to like different artists. For Wasp Honey, for example, Phoebe Bridgers was a huge influence. Like Punisher was an album I was playing on repeat that summer. And I definitely like those textures of like ambient sounds, like really echoey guitar, and creating a space in the music that when you listen to it, you can picture the place, you know?
Yeah, because of these textures that you create, it definitely does take you to a place, especially in Dancing in the Ceiling, which is your latest release and probably my favorite. And it's usually I'm not just saying that. I usually have a favorite when people come on, and it's usually not necessarily the most recent one, but in this case it is. I just love those. It's like tropical guitar tones. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
So is that something
you
kind of like experimented with and found? You're like, ooh, this is nice.
Yeah, I mean, texture is really important to me for sure. And thanks for saying that's your favorite, by the way. I feel like it's my favorite so far too. But yeah, for Dancing in the Ceiling, it was a lot of like synths, and like I have like a guitar running throughout that definitely carries the song through. But yeah, I would say like synthesizers and vocal effects definitely are a big part of that song. And I experimented a little more with like background vocals and harmonies like that, because that's also something I really like in the music I listen to.
Did you say you had like formal training at all?
I took piano lessons. For I want to say like 7 years.
Okay.
But yeah, that's about it for formal training.
I was drumming for years, and then I got lessons later. So going back to the basics, it's always difficult because I'm like I had all my rhythms down, doing everything as a fun little kid, and then they're like, okay, stop that and do right, left, right, left, right.
Oh, I hate that.
I know.
I hate that. I feel like it just sucks all the creativity out of it. Mm-hmm. Like having to like start with the rudiments, and I feel like it boxes you in a lot. So I kind of was happy to stop going to lessons and just get back in touch with, just experimenting for yourself and not sticking to like theory and like rules and all these things. It's important to know the rules so you can break them well, but you can only go so far, for me personally.
And when you're musically minded, sometimes a lot of it is intuitive, oddly, because like I'll be doing vocal harmonies for some artists, and I don't have like a music theory background or anything, but I'll based on like just songs I've heard and over the years, listening to a bunch of music and different harmonies, like I like pick out what sounds good. It's like, sometimes it's all that's necessary.
Yeah, totally. And I think like listening to a lot of music, listening to a diverse range of music, I think can give you a really good education about like how you want to make music and what sounds right and feels right for you.
Mm-hmm. And you have kind of a steady release schedule going. I mean, it was like once every 6 months or so?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I always have the intention to release a lot more often than I do. But I have this thing where I have like a sudden burst of energy, and it's like, go, 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 get everything done, do everything, and then I'll like die for like 3 months and then reanimate again. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the schedule isn't so much a schedule as it is like me riding my creative waves.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the biggest creative hurdle you have? Or maybe it's, personal work stuff or...
Probably that, like harnessing energy for me is really difficult and definitely gets in the way of the things that I want to do. Being able to like sit down and force yourself to work and actually get something out of it, I think is really important. And it's something I'm working towards like every day. Definitely since I started releasing music, I try to balance my energy more instead of, going full force for a week and then just leaving it. Yeah, I would definitely say that's like a big hurdle of mine.
And are these singles of yours leading up to something, or are you just kind of one at a time going along?
One at a time. Okay. Yeah, like it's with music, I love it and it's definitely my passion, but I don't really take anything too seriously. It's not like I'm working towards an album. I think one day I will definitely want to. But right now I'm just trying to find my sound, figure out, where I want to go with this. And if there's people listening, then definitely I'll like set bigger goals, like an album. But for now, it's just, single by single, whatever I feel like doing.
Yeah. And so far, so good. And you seem to have found a pretty comfortable genre and overall sonic sound with, I guess, lo-fi pop, you'd say?
I would say so, yeah.
And are you going to continue with that? Or are there other genres you want to explore? So
with the singles that I have out so far, like I said before, they're songs that I wrote as I was producing. I have a lot of songs written that haven't, seen the recording studio. And I think it's very different to what I've actually been making. Like, I think producing songs as I write them dictates a lot of like those textures and things, because that's what I prioritize when I'm doing that. But in the future, when I'm producing songs that are already written, I think it's definitely going to have more of like an acoustic vibe. I think that's something I'm going to be moving towards, or something a little heavier. It's just about being able to have that vision come true in the way that I really want it to. And I think that's what's really intimidating for me, is grabbing a song I've already written, having a really clear idea of what I want from it, and then getting frustrated trying to get that out of like the production stage.
Do you play live at all?
I used to before COVID. So I had a band called Lunar Motel. We were all based in Toronto, and we were actually doing a few shows. We got featured for an open mic night, and we won a battle of the bands, and it was a lot of fun. It's definitely something it pushed me out of my comfort zone, which is what I really liked about it.
What would you say is the most difficult part of one of your songs to put together? Like maybe you just couldn't find the right guitar tone for this, or the beat was off. What's a difficult thing that you overcame?
The frickin' vocals. Like, it's so difficult to get a take that I actually like. Like my forte is songwriting and producing. That's what I really like doing. So, if I'm writing songs, I have this need to like sing my own songs, but I'm not like primarily a vocalist. So I definitely have a tough time like grinding out a good take, or like overdoing it, and then like, I'm like vocally tired and I have to start again the next day. But yeah, vocals are definitely very difficult for me.
Do you do like, 12 takes and, comp the ones you want?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely do like a bunch of takes, and then I'll delete all of them and then start over. It's a whole process. It's definitely like on a day by day basis. Like if it's one day where I'm just taking like a take after take after take, I know that it's not really going to be that fruitful. I find that a lot of the takes that I end up with are like the initial ones that I do, and in my mind aren't going to be the ones that are in the final cut. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that, like, if I'm relaxed and I'm not actually putting too much pressure on myself, that's the take I get,
Exactly. Yeah. I even feel that doing like voiceover sometimes for this show, it's like if I'm not thinking about it too much, that's the one that I pick eventually.
Yeah. Getting out of your head is the trick.
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Have you done any like co-writes with other artists?
No, actually. I have like, I think so. Yeah, I think that's something that would also push me out of my comfort zone, is working with other artists. I tend to get very like isolated when I'm writing music or producing. It's definitely like it's just me in the room and I'm focusing. So I think collaborating with other artists would definitely open my mind to other ideas more. But yeah, like so far, not yet, but hopefully in the future, I'd love to do that.
I definitely see both sides of it, where it's like, there's a pride thing where it's like, this is my music, my emotions, my song. But at the same time, you could, be in a songwriting session with someone and they have like the idea that sparks, the main hook or whatever happens to be. And in the end, it still ends up being your story, just kind of more of a collaborative process with it.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about collaborating, is that, with more than one person, you get those ideas that otherwise you wouldn't get.
So who would be a dream collaborator of yours? Probably Phoebe Bridgers and this kind of people.
Yeah. Honestly, St. Vincent that'd be sick. St. Vincent's like my hero. She's so cool. And I think her production style is so neat, and she has such you can tell she's really disciplined with her work, so I would love to just be around that energy and see what happens.
Yeah. Do you have any career highlights so far?
Well, one highlight is Wasp Honey actually got over 2K listens, which was really cool. I wasn't expecting that. And, if I get like 100 on Spotify, I'm like, sick, that's sick. But yeah, no, I think having 2K listens was like a really eye-opening experience for me, because I was like, wow, like people are listening, and that's really exciting to me.
And was that the result of a playlist placement, or?
I saw on that Spotify for Artists app that like a couple people have put it on their playlist. It wasn't like a Spotify curated one. Maybe for the next one I'll get on one. But yeah. So I also did more promo work on Wasp Honey.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes it's completely random. I had a release of mine. Just looking at the stats, it's like little humps, and one day, and I was like, "What is this?" And I don't know if it was a mistake or what, but apparently for like 2 days in Indonesia, that song was hot.
That's incredible. I feel like it's always like some random country that you wouldn't expect is like, wow, yeah, they like me over there, sick.
Yeah, I gotta book a show or something.
Yeah.
The drums in Forget, it's like a kind of 80s vibe. All of your songs kind of an 80s vibe to them, but do you spend much time thinking about percussion elements of it?
I definitely spend a lot of time like trying out different things. I know Logic has been such a lifesaver for that, because like I played cajon for this band that I was in with my brother called Johnny the Duo. So I do have like a bit of a percussive background.
Gotcha.
But it's something that I think is really important, because it can make or break a song, I think. Like if you don't have the right beat supporting the melodies and all the other instruments, it can really fall apart at points. So yeah, definitely I prioritize thinking about like percussion and what it adds to the music.
Like I'll get asked advice for like, how does this mix sound, that kind of thing, and they're like, do you have any advice? I'm like, well, a lot of it really does come down to sound selection. Like if you just picking a beat, saying this is good enough, calling it a day, that usually won't fly. Sometimes you get lucky, but it's important to have that quality on every element going into it.
Yeah, sometimes you can tell when it's like, the beat was just kind of thrown on to that track as like a placeholder and was never changed. Yeah, definitely not something I want to fall into.
And you hear that on some of like mainstream pop acts too. You're like,
yeah.
And some of it might come down to demo-itis, where like they just listen to that version so many times. They're like, this has to be the one, right?
It becomes the only one that sounds right, and that's really dangerous. Because when you don't like step away and then come back and actually hear the music for what it's giving you, then you fall into that rut.
And that's part of your process too, right? Coming back to songs later on.
Yeah. Well, one good thing about that burst of energy is that it gives me a lot of time to leave a project and then come back and listen to it with fresh ears, so I guess it's not all downside for that.
Yeah. And sometimes for me, it's day to day, where I'll go to sleep being very proud of something, wake up and like,
oh God, yeah. We've all been there for sure. Like working till like 3 a.m. on something, and while you're working on it, you're in the flow, you're like, oh yeah, this is like the greatest thing I've ever made. And then the next day is like, oh wow, this is not what I thought it was.
And at the same time, I have the opposite sometimes, where we were working on something for an artist, and I'll send it to them like with all these caveats, I might do the vocal different here, blah, blah, blah. Then they're like, oh my God, it's amazing. I love it, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, oh, okay.
Even like with the inception of like songs, actually Dancing in the Ceiling was like this, it started off as an audio recording. I had like the melody in my head, and even at the end of the recording you can hear me going like, well, that's nothing. And then I went back to it like a few months later, listened to it and was like, oh, maybe there's something here. And I fell in love with it again,
Yeah, it came out so good. I just love,
Thank you.
I could listen to that loop, just the main loop on repeat. Like, you actually should do like one of those YouTube 10-hour videos where it's just that for sleep meditation or something.
There's one of those for like everything.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm building a little songwriter family. It looks like. Welcome to the family.
Thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. You're adding a lot of value for other artists. I know it's important for me to connect with other musicians, and especially people at the start of their career like I am. You're doing good work.
Thank you.
Links to Lyly Kid's music and everything else can be found in the show notes. Indie Echo is a product of High Five Music, a digital production studio that brings your bedroom demos to life. If you want your music produced, mixed, or remixed, visit the link on my Instagram at High Five Music, and you can follow the show at Indie Echo Podcast. Thank you for listening.